Abigail Spanberger just won the Virginia governorship in November 2025, not because she was a moderate, not because she cared about affordability, but because she executed a precision-engineered deception, and here is the trap she just set for herself. From a prosecutor's perspective, this isn't about taxes. It's not about climate policy. It's not even about crime. This is about false inducement. Spanberger didn't just overpromise. She didn't just pivot. She didn't just go left after the election. She secured power by saying one thing and then, within days, triggered a chain of economic, legal, and political exposure that compounds over time. The clock started ticking within 14 days of her inauguration. Let that sink in. Pay attention to what happens next. Imagine it is October 2026. A Virginia General Assembly oversight hearing is underway. Staffers flip through binders. A delegate leans into the microphone and asks one question. Governor, why did you campaign on affordability while approving legislation that raised costs on more than 40 consumer categories in a surplus state? That is not a political question. That is a record-locking question. And sitting in the room are trial lawyers, opposition researchers, and campaign attorneys already building exhibit lists. Because what Spanberger believes is governing is, in reality, creating a documented contradiction trail. And that trail ends in discovery. Here's what nobody is telling you. This isn't just unpopular policy, it's systemic exposure. Virginia entered Spanberger's term with a $572 million surplus, nearly $10 billion in excess revenue over 4 years, a rainy day fund at roughly 15%, among the highest in the country. There was no fiscal emergency. Yet within 3 weeks, Democrats introduced more than 50 tax proposals, not ideas, not talking points, filed bills, taxes on dog walking, gym memberships, dry cleaning, home and vehicle repairs, concert tickets, fantasy sports, counseling services, package delivery, Amazon, FedEx, UPS, firearms and ammunition, even electric leaf blowers, but not gas-powered ones. And that is where they messed up. From a prosecutor's perspective, pattern matters. You don't accidentally tax dozens of everyday activities in a surplus state. You do it because affordability was never the governing objective. It was the entry mechanism. But wait, it gets worse. One proposal raises the top marginal income tax rate to 10% on income over $1 million. Another pushes it to 13.8%. That would put Virginia above California. Let that sink in. A traditionally tax-competitive southern state leapfrogging the most heavily taxed economy in the country. From a legal standpoint, that triggers capital flight analysis. Businesses don't argue ideology, they argue damages. When companies leave, when job growth slows, when tax bases shrink, those outcomes don't vanish. They become data points, they become exhibits. Then comes RGGI. Spanberger announced Virginia would rejoin the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. She called it cost savings. That statement alone will follow her for years. RGGI is cap and trade. Power producers buy emissions allowances. Those costs are passed directly to consumers. Under the previous administration, Virginia exited RGGI, and residents saved roughly $500 million annually on electricity bills. Rejoining reverses that. Every higher utility bill now becomes a documented contradiction. And here's the part rarely mentioned. RGGI funds don't stay in Virginia. They flow through a nonprofit structure based in New York. Virginia ratepayers pay more. The money leaves the state. There is no direct voter accountability. This isn't environmental reform. It's cost outsourcing. Then comes criminal justice. House Bill 863 eliminates mandatory minimums for violent felonies. Rape, manslaughter, child pornography distribution, assault on law enforcement, repeat violent offenses. Mandatory minimums exist because judicial leniency led to repeat harm. They were implemented after offenders were released early and reoffended. Removing them expands discretion. Discretion creates inconsistency. Inconsistency creates victims. Every violent reoffense becomes a name, a face, and a campaign ad. Spanberger ran on law enforcement credibility. Her party's legislation collides directly with that claim. This isn't reform versus punishment, it's messaging versus reality. Then, immigration. On day one, Spanberger rescinded Executive Order 47, ending state police cooperation with ICE regarding criminal illegal aliens. Approximately 6,200 individuals had been detained under the program. Not random migrants, criminal offenders. Ending cooperation isn't symbolic. It transfers risk. From a prosecutor's perspective, once you knowingly sever enforcement cooperation, you own what follows. And then came the appointment that changed the entire story. Stanley Meter, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. He oversaw the FBI Richmond field office during the production of the memo targeting traditional Catholics. The memo linked religious practice to extremism. It involved surveillance and parish infiltration. It was later retracted. The FBI admitted procedural failures. Meter was placed on administrative leave in June 2025. Spanberger elevated him. That reframes the narrative. Whistleblowers suffer. Supervisors advance. That is not an accident. That is institutional signaling. Here is the checkmate. Spanberger thinks she is governing. She is not. She is creating a record. Every tax proposal, every energy decision, every sentencing change, every appointment, they stack. This is no longer about whether voters like her. It's about whether her own words survive scrutiny. She ran on affordability and delivered cost escalation in a surplus state. That contradiction is permanent. You cannot argue intent against numbers. You cannot argue moderation against outcomes. So watch the next 48 hours closely. Does she publicly oppose any of these bills now? Does she draw a single red line? Or does she stay silent and let others take the heat? Because once the record is complete, this stops being a debate. It becomes an indictment. Let that sink in. Make sure to subscribe the channel and turn on the bell notification.